Hello, my name is Aaron Lagerstedt. This is my final critical assignment. So here we go. First, my client is a white male, 62 years old, played sports growing up, and according to CDC guidelines does not follow the correct amount, which is 30 minutes, 2 to 3 days per week of moderate to intense exercise. The tools used in order to assess my client was the FMS screening. I just want to say it's not a diagnostic tool for injury or illness. However, it can be used to assess imbalances or problems in his movement, which may help for my programming. The ones I want to highlight are the deep squat scoring, and then the trunk stability test, and then later talk about shoulder mobility. Even though he scored higher on the test number directly, his shoulder mobility was lacking in the deep squat. I just want to focus that, like I said, the fault was in the rounding, and then trunk stability was in low back hyperextension. And I chose those in my program. I based those based on the Starrett and Cordoza 2013, Becoming a Supple Leopard. It was just a good affirmation or just re-emphasis of problems in those movements and how I can fix those. Results, contribution to program design. Those are the three I want to highlight because they could be motor control cues. From the trainer's perspective, I could not be cueing them correctly, and that just might not be triggering to the central nervous system to fire those muscles correctly, and there might be a nerve issue there. I'm not saying there is, but there might be. Possibly because muscles aren't pre-activated or warmed up enough, or the nerves aren't sending impulses to fire certain muscles. But mainly, I believe, based off of my references and resources, it was on joint mobilization and the lack of full range of motion in those two joints, which is the glenohumeral and then the subscapulothoracic. I think from the deep squat screen, what I saw was within those joints, the muscles that are in parentheses are the ones that are tight according to Starrett et al. And then a lot of what NASM's textbook has out. And then the underactive muscles were the ones that were causing the shoulders to round, which could be from the tightness of the ones above, or it could be just from a lack of usage on those, causing him to round like this and not have an upright posture and be able to activate those muscles. So those are the movements I wanted to focus on in parentheses in the underactive area. And then through the trunk stability screen, all those are potential muscles that could be underactive. I'm not saying they are all the reason, but a lot of times it could be one of the following. And so I just wanted to be better safe than sorry and reach them all, because they say is if focusing on the weakest link is sometimes you're going to fix more problems that way, or basically your only greatest strength is your weakest. So my periodization, I want to explain my program, included SMART goals, exercise selection, exercise order, frequency, or the FIT principle, as some may call it, and then the progression I chose. And this is just a summary of the periodization cycle. SMART goals stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. This is just a highlight of how I chose them. Specifically, I want to choose shoulder mobility and lumbar stability. There's a lot of things we could have worked on and a lot of goals he had and wanted to do, but these are just one of them. We just want to narrow it down because too many, you won't be able to hit all of them. Measurable, super easy, score higher on the FMS, just to show that we have gotten better. Achievable, doesn't require a lot of equipment, body weight, and bands a lot of times. and a lot of the things you could do didn't necessarily need a gym. We chose a commitment level that was 2 to 3 days a week, so reasonable, very realistic. And then timely, for starters, we chose our 2 mesocycles of 1 to 4 weeks and then 5 to 8 weeks. Now, down to the exercises I chose. I chose them based on the references, Getman, LR, not the exercises specifically, but the type of functional training and circuit training that involved in a combination with, from the needs analysis, what we chose, so which was a lot of retraction emphasis, so a lot of pulling movements, and then a lot of muscles that activated the core and global stabilization system, which is the system that helps with eccentric control between the upper and lower body through help with stabilizing through the pelvic and the spine region. All right, so through this is just 2 examples of what my mesocycles look like. This is mesocycle 1, day 1 and day 2. Day 2's a mobility-based day with some aerobic training with 60 to 70% of his heart rate max, which was, we estimated out using the Carbonin method, of 122 to 131 beats per minute. And then if we look at day 1 here, I have resistance band and pull parts, dorsiflexion to wall, glute bridge. Those are all like warm-ups, pre-activation exercises, and then mobility as well. And then I have A1, A2, B1, B2. What that is I'm going straight from an upper body exercise, lower body exercise, then to an upper body, and then resting, then going back to lower body, then upper body. This training is called peripheral heart action system training. It's good because you can your muscles get a slight rest, flip-flopping back and forth, but your heart rate still stays engaged, and then you still have the elevated circuit training component involved. And then my exercises order for mesocycle 2 and also mesocycle 1 is I wanted to go from compound movements to isolated movements. Compound movements usually involve more effort, more joints involved, so you just want to do the harder ones first and then easier ones next. In mesocycle 2, the slight things I changed were, if he wasn't able to do the shoulder press, then switch to landmark press. That's if his mobility isn't at the level it should be. All right, fit principle. So fit principle is basically going off of how I chose my 8 weeks plan, but through frequency, intensity, time, type, and enjoyment. 2 to 3 days a week of each modality because CDC recommends it, and that's what he was able to give. Intensity was, I wanted to do 60-70% because that's at the point of lower intensity, just a lower intensity mix. We're almost at the glycolytic oxidative. I would say we're more around there, but not just solely an oxidative, burning just the fat. Time was what he could give, which was 30 to 60 minutes. Type was aerobic and resistance training. We want to get a little bit of both. And then basketball biomechanics just for enjoyment, because he ain't going to stick to a program if he doesn't like it. All right, so now from progression and linear and traditional, these 2 boxes I just wanted to show are some of just my positives and negatives of each one, that why I chose it. They explain for themselves. But the reason I didn't choose traditional at first is because there's a lot of variety and just a lot of changing back and forth between different rep ranges and sets. And for someone at that age, that might be a little bit too much. And there's also no supercompensation theory involved, so we didn't have a lot of time to get used to one particular exercise. All right, so this is the video for exercise technique. Here I'm explaining the exercise. Right, so that's his body weight squat. That's one of the lower body movements I wanted to talk about. Overall, his form is really good. The only thing that I notice is his back. There's not a lot of upper body posterior activation, which is maybe why his shoulders, causing his shoulders to jut forward. And his initiation of the movement is in the posterior chain. So this is an anterior view of the same. Here, biomechanics of feet and knees are really good. The torque is externally rotating or separating the floor, so he has a really stable joint in those areas. Right now, we're going to do the barbell back squat. He approaches correctly. Sets the bar in his lower traps, squeezing his back together, and his hands and thumbs are in the right position. However, his hands and wrists are in slight hyperextension from the movement. And then from squatting and lowering himself, you can tell that the movement is initiated in the knees and not necessarily in the glutes and the posterior chain of the hamstrings. Because his upright body stays fairly upright. It's okay to hinge over as long as the barbell is in the center, midpoint, in the center of gravity of your foot. And his head, though, is looking good 4 to 5 feet ahead of him. This is an anterior view of the same movement. However, from this movement, you can tell everything's good except the bar placement. It's shifted over, the weight's a little off balance. He could fix that, and it would help a lot with his movement. Right now, we're going to go to the shoulder press. Shoulder press, from anterior views, you can tell, it looks pretty good, looks great. However, once you go to the lateral view, his lateral view, you can tell the elbows are flared out a little bit. His back hyperextends, which is causing him to press out in front of him and up. So like I said, that would really is because he doesn't have shoulder mobility in his shoulders. And he needs to move the bar around his head instead of straight out. Right, and here's just two positive and negatives from summaries from the video, from the overhead shoulder press and then the barbell back squat. All right, next is application. I think the assessment process is the most crucial part because it's your blueprint in your prescription sheet. And like I said, you can't get better if you don't take the right prescription, like from the doctor. I'm not a doctor, but at least the chances are very slim that you'll get better from the wrong prescription. You might make the situation worse. So I think fixing the simple issues that have ingrained through thousands and thousands of movement cycles is very hard, but that's the importance of progression involved. I think one thing that I really need to pay attention to in the future is it's a very detail-oriented process. You need to be very organized to do it correctly. And then lastly is just focus on constant progression, and something I can work on is reevaluating the clients constantly, is just to show them that they're getting better. So for the first verse and the last verse, both of those are encompassing. In the workplace, we just need to love people more. A lot of times stress and everything gets involved, and we just forget about that and get angry. So we just need to take a deep breath and love others. The second to last verse I chose, Colossians, basically just talks about in the workplace, we need to be motivated by our desire to glorify God and our workmanship, and whatever we do, it's for Him and not for man. So just doing our best. Lastly is how does fitness and health and faith and Christ interacts with people and address their health concerns. Well, he talks about honor the Lord with your bodies. It's the temple. It's act as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to the Lord. This is your act of worship. In addition, he talks about love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. He just basically talks about a very well-rounded, holistic approach and how he address both physical and spiritual concerns. Lastly, these are all my references and all my supportive things for my program. And thank you very much.